Hello Nixi family and welcome to the second episode of Nixi Meets. Today in Nixi Meets we will have the opportunity to know Barbara Nunez. She's a child life specialist. She's currently working in the Miami Center of Cáncer Institute in the radiation and oncology department. She says she's in love with her career because she wakes up every morning knowing that she's helping children cope and develop skills that will help them in unfortunate situations in the hospital. Good morning, Barbara. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Really nice. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
It's a pleasure for us to have you in Nixi Meets. So tell me, how are you today in the hospital? What's the situation right now? We're living in a kind of difficult situation. Have this affected you, your job as a child life specialist day to day?
So thankfully it has not affected us as much. We have some patients who are currently coming to their cancer treatment and who have tested positive for the COVID, but we use the protective gear. Every time we come into work, you get screened, they take your temperature, they ask you different questions. So even though we're still seeing patients who are positive with COVID, we still protect ourselves as much as we can by using our masks, our goggles, and by keeping that distance from our employees, which it tends to be a little hard because, before we could go everywhere without a mask and socialize with people, and now we can't do that. So it kind of sucks, but we're getting through it.
That's great. That's great to know that you can still do your job because it's a really important job in hospital, and there's the thing that you have the opportunity to still be in hospital doing your job. It's great. Let's go back a little bit in time. Can you tell us, when did you decide you wanted to be a child life specialist?
I wanted to be a child life specialist when I started volunteering for a local children's hospital, and I was under the child life department. And one time, my child life supervisor, she had said to me, I will want you to go visit this patient who is in the pediatric intensive care unit. He needs some playtime, so if you could spend some time with him, that would be awesome. So obviously I agreed, and I ended up visiting this little boy in the pediatric intensive care unit. And as I walked in the room, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed because he had no expression. He was alone in his room, and he just did not even smile. And I sit down with him. I had brought some Legos, because what little boy doesn't love Legos? And I brought some Spider-Man coloring sheets. That way Spider-Man could swing from tower to tower. And as I walk in the room and I sit down and I start setting up the play session, he still has no expression in his face. And after 30 minutes, I tell him, I need to go see other patients, but it was a pleasure meeting you. And then as I started cleaning up all the Legos and I stood up, he immediately grabbed my arm and he told me, please do not go. And in that moment, there was just something in me that I knew I was meant to be a child life specialist. And so that's how kind of my journey with child life started. After I did my volunteer hours, I needed to do a practicum, and I did my practicum at Nicholas Children's Hospital, where I learned so much about the field, and that's when I truly fell in love with a career. And then after that, I just decided to keep going and keep myself motivated. I started a master's degree, and once I completed my master's, I completed also my internship at Golisano Children's Hospital. And ever since then, it's been a crazy journey, let me tell you, because it's very competitive. But every day it's so rewarding being able to make an impact in some of this children's life, and I'm glad to be part of their journey here in the hospital.
That's a really beautiful story. How But it comes to my mind how hard it must be for you living every day with those children, developing emotional relationships with them. How do you cope with that on your day-to-day life?
Especially here at the Institute, I'm not gonna lie, it is hard. It's hard to not get involved. It's hard not to get attached to some of these children. But one of the things that have always worked for me, it's being able to take a step back when I'm feeling like I'm getting a little too close to the children. I try to keep my distance with them, and I treat them as how I would treat a new patient who's coming in for treatment. And one of the things that I also do is I try to keep my emotions aside, which is really hard because I constantly deal with patients who, for them, I'm their best friend. And sometimes I need to keep that professional boundary between them. So it is hard, but I've learned to leave those emotions aside.
Of course. On the first episode, we met Juanita Prada. She was a two-time cancer survivor, and now she has her own channel on YouTube, and she talks about late effects of cancer. And she was telling us the story about her in hospital, how her child life specialist became her second mother. I mean, she was so attached to her. She developed a relationship that still is maintained today, even though it's been a long time, a lot of years that since she left the hospital, but they keep this relationship, and I think it was really beautiful. As long as her child life specialist told her she had to be a child life specialist, so right now she's studying to be a child life specialist as well.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. Unfortunately, with our profession, I know that we need to have at least 2 years pass before we can connect with some of our patients again. So once a patient is finished with their treatments, unfortunately, I cannot add them on Facebook or be socially with them outside of the hospital because of the boundary that we have. But I hope that after those 2 years have passed, I hope that I can keep in touch with some of the patients that I've seen throughout their journey here at the Institute.
Of course. And as you're working on oncology, right? On radiotherapy?
I am. So right now I am in the radiation oncology department.
And how do you think you have to adapt your day-to-day work with children, knowing that they have cancer, which is an extremely difficult situation, not only for them but also with their family? How do you adapt what you know about child life, maybe working with a child who's okay and who has to go through surgery, but it's not really invasive surgery, and then you have to change and work with children who has cancer? How do you adapt your words, your kind of the way you relate to them?
So I'm glad that you're asking this question because this is one of the skills that I was able to learn from my internship. No matter the unit or the population that you are working with, you always adapt those child life skills that you have learned to any type of situation. So, and that's what I'm doing. When I first started, I was a little bit overwhelmed because I was like, I've never dealt. So throughout my internship, I work in the emergency department, and I also did the general medicine unit, and I also did the pediatric intensive care unit. So I had never worked with oncology in the past, or radiation oncology. So when I started this position, I was like, oh my God, how do I teach cancer to kids? How do I educate them? How do I prepare them for their radiation treatment? And one thing that I remember, I was like, I just need to adapt the skills that I learned from my internship to this type of population. And that's what I've been doing, and it's been working just fine. So yeah.
I saw on your Instagram account, which we will leave the links below. You create really, really beautiful masks for your children. Can you show us one of these masks and tell us a little bit more about it?
Of course. So let me tell you a little bit about the mask. The purpose of these radiation masks is so they don't have any, because of the type of radiation that they're receiving, it's called proton therapy, and it's very precise. So we want to make sure that there's no movement, like let's say we're treating the brain, we want to make sure that there's no movement at all on the head, because the therapy goes precisely to the tumor itself. So the function of the mask is to make sure to hold the head super, super still. Now this mask can be a little bit overwhelming. By the looks of it, it looks really tight, the material is really hard, and I'm glad that I can personalize and normalize the whole environment a little bit more for these kids. And one of the things that I do as part of my job is I decorate the mask. And here's one of a current patient that we have.
Wow.
I'm not sure if you can see very well. Let me see. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can put this in the box so you can see it a little bit better.
That's so cool.
So this patient, he is a Minnesota Vikings fan.
American football, right?
Yes. And he had requested for his mask to be the Minnesota Vikings. So I decided to go with the mascot, and I made this football helmet for him, and he loved it. Once I showed it to him, he was like, "Oh my God, you did this by yourself? That's pretty cool." So he really liked this mask. And then, to be honest, the next one that I'm going to show you is one of my favorites, all-time favorites. And because I'm a little bit of a nerd, I am obsessed with Harry Potter. And when this kid told me that he wanted a Harry Potter mask, I literally just fell on the floor, and I was like, "Oh my God, I want to be your best friend." So I ended up making a Harry Potter mask for him, and this is it.
Amazing.
If you look at the side, you have this.
The golden snitch.
Yep, and that's Harry, of course. And then on the other side, you have the Deadly Hallows sign or symbol.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How
I just love that I can do that for this kid and put a smile in their faces while they're going through their treatment. So it makes me happy.
Of course, I'm sure there's not even a single way of comparing one of these masks without painting to after you painted them. I mean, they're amazing.
Yeah.
How did you get the idea to paint them? How did you start doing it?
I wasn't the one that established this idea. There has been other centers throughout the States who are doing the same thing for these kids. And the ChildLife Specialist who used to work here, she was the one that told me the idea. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is a fantastic idea. I should definitely continue doing this for the kids, because it's great to see them be happy when they see their mask, especially for the little ones. One of the things that I like to do, like let's say if it's a superhero mask, one thing that I tell them when they go to treatment, I say, "Oh my God, are you ready to become Spider-Man?" And they're like, "Yeah," they get excited. So just by doing that, it makes the whole radiation treatment different for them.
It becomes a game.
Yeah, it becomes a game, and they love it. It's not so much, "Oh my God, I have to lay still and not move," and it's a different perspective when I get to decorate the mask.
Sure. Did they get to keep the masks after the treatment or not?
So yes, they get to keep the mask, and they're very excited to take it home and show it to all their friends and all their families. And it's funny because sometimes they'll ask me for their last day. They'll ask me, "Oh my God, I want to please get in the picture, since you were the one who made this awesome mask for us." And that just lights up my heart. So
Sure. One of the main reasons I must admit we are doing this channel is to give voice to child life specialists like you who do this amazing work in hospitals, because in Spain it's not that common to have a child life specialist in hospitals. Some of them have, but it's not that common. So I think what you are doing, it's something that should be a right for the children to have.
Yeah, because it does, honestly, it does make a difference when you have somebody, a child life specialist, that is helping you go through one of the hardest procedures that sometimes can be very painful. And just having somebody there with you who's going to support you and who's going to prepare you for those medical procedures, it just makes a big difference. And I totally agree with you. I think that every hospital or every children's hospital or even just a general hospital who's treating pediatrics, they should definitely have a child life specialist. And I'm glad that this field is really growing and a lot more people are getting to know about the wonderful world of child life, and we're just growing and growing and growing, and more people are starting to learn about child life.
It's great because when you see a hospital that has a department of child life specialists, when the child life people comes to the hospital and starts working in a hospital, then the hospital change, because you just don't work on the children. You just create the space. You paint everything. You just transform the hospital.
Yeah, you do. It's really, the work that we do is really incredible, and like I said before, it's really rewarding, and I'm glad that we are making this difference in every kid's life who come to the hospital, maybe to get their treatment or for a serious illness or whatever it is. I'm glad that we are there to support them in every way.
For all the parents who are watching this now,
Mm-hmm.
how would you explain to them what's the relationship you have in a hospital when you come into a hospital and then your children is diagnosed with cancer? How do you interact with them, and how do you cope with their feelings? Because I cannot imagine how much that would feel to a parent to receive this bad news, and then how do you help them cope with the feelings, and how do you help them help their own children?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned is to always just provide an ear to listen to. When parents do receive those terrible news, unfortunately, there's not much that we can do other than just being there with them and supporting them and preparing for what is about to happen next. And one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes you don't need to provide support. One of the things that I've learned is that silence is key, because in that moment it's like the whole world is falling apart, and if you're just there in silence with them and like helping them cope with whatever may be happening, they don't need to hear you speak in order to provide support to them. As long as you're there for them, it could be in silence, they will always remember who was there in those difficult moments.
At the moment they receive the news, which, as you said, the world is falling apart, which will be your three main pieces of advice for them, just to keep calm and to start moving again?
I would just let them know that, you know, the medical team is doing their best to help you and help your child, and always let them know that you are there for whatever they need, whether it is to a shoulder to cry on, a helping hand, whether it is to give them a hug in the moment, whatever it is. Just let them know that they have a lot of support from the whole entire medical team and the whole child life department or the whole child life team. I think letting them know that you're there to support them, it's all any parent could ask for.
So I guess that they must be super grateful to you after months of battling against cancer, when they get out of the hospital and they overcome it, and then they can say thank you. I cannot imagine how grateful a parent must be to you and all the work you do.
Yeah, it's actually a bittersweet feeling because when they come to the Institute, I get to see them from the very beginning, where I see that don't know how they're gonna spend, I would say, like between 30 to 33 days here, coming every day to get the radiation treatment. And I am grateful that I get to be part of their whole entire journey while they're here for their treatment. And just on their last day, it, like I said, it's a very bittersweet feeling seeing them happy that they have accomplished and they have gone through such a tough treatment. And it just makes me happy being able to be part of their celebration. One of the things that we do here, we throw a little, obviously with the COVID restrictions, we're not to do a big celebration, but when there's no COVID, we try to do a big party for them, and they get to ring a bell because they have accomplished their radiation treatment and it's all over now. And hopefully the next time we'll see them will be just for their follow-up.
That's so beautiful. I think it's a great way to end this interview. I don't know, maybe there's something you would like to ask to end.
I just want to say that I am very grateful for the work that you guys do. I think it's incredible using the virtual reality to prepare a kid for their upcoming surgery, and I think it's just a fantastic idea. I feel like that every hospital should have what you guys do. It's just amazing.
Thank you so much. Coming from you, this is great to hear that. I'm sure that all the team will be very grateful and happy to hear that. As I said, it's been a pleasure to have you. We will leave the links of your Instagram so everyone can go check your amazing masks you have that you post. And it's been a pleasure, Barbara. Thank you so much.
I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. It's also been a pleasure to finally meet you, and just keep up the great work. You guys are doing a great job. Awesome.
Same. Thank you very much. Bye, Barbara.
Thank you. Bye.